Mindset Tales presents the Aitharan Express, a woman's escape, a train journey, and a love that defied the past. Selena had learned to pack quietly. In the half-light before dawn, she folded her dresses with the care of someone smoothing wrinkles from a life she no longer meant to wear. Belle, too, still slept beyond the thin walls of the cottage, hens mute on their perches, the well-roped slack and silent. Even the hills seemed to hold their breath. Only her husband's breathing broke the hush, heavy and uneven, the sound of a man who took up space without noticing who else needed air. She did not look at him as she closed the door. The road to Levimart was pale with dust, winding through fields that smelled of cut hay and damp earth. Selena walked quickly, her shoes pinching, her heart keeping time with her steps. She had rehearsed this morning in her mind for months, the way she would not turn back, the way she would keep her chin level even when fear tugged at her sleeve like a child begging to be carried. Levimart station rose from the edge of town like a promise made of iron and glass. It was far grander than anything in Belle too. Arched windows, brass rails polished to a mirror sheen, porters in crisp uniforms moving with purpose. And there, breathing out a low, luxurious sigh, waited the train. Its carriages gleamed a deep midnight blue, trimmed in gold. Selena had never seen anything so beautiful. She felt suddenly small, like a country girl who had wandered into a painting. She took a seat on a wooden bench and smoothed her skirt, trying to slow her pulse. The station clock ticked loudly. Somewhere, a kettle whistled. That was when she felt it, the unmistakable prickle of being watched. Across the platform stood a young man, leaning casually against a pillar. He wore a light coat and a smile that seemed to belong there, as natural as the morning sun spilling across the tiles. His dark hair curled just enough to suggest rebellion, and his eyes, steady, curious, rested on her without apology. Selena's first instinct was to look away. In Belle too, attention had always meant judgment or ownership. But when she glanced back, he did not leer or smirk. He simply watched as though she were something rare passing briefly through his world. She held his gaze for a moment longer than propriety allowed, then looked down, surprised by the warmth blooming in her chest. It had been years, since anyone had looked at her as if she were more than a burden or a possession. The whistle blew. Movement rippled along the platform as passengers rose and gathered their bags. Selena stood, her fingers tightening around the handle of her small case. As she stepped toward the train, the crowd shifted, and suddenly the young man was beside her. He gently reached for her bag.
"Allow me, please."
She hesitated only a second before letting go.
"Thank you. That is very kind of you."
He lifted the case with ease as they walked, then added,
"I am Ernesto, and you are?"
"My name is Selena."
He repeated her name softly, as though testing how it fit.
"You're traveling alone. From where, Selena?"
He stopped himself, smiling.
"No, forgive me. That's none of my business."
She smiled back despite herself.
"I am from Belle too."
Somehow the word felt lighter when spoken here. As they reached the carriage steps, Ernesto offered his hand. The gesture was simple, courteous, yet when she placed her palm in his, a small shock passed through her, like waking from a long sleep. Once aboard, Selena felt the train's opulence wrap around her, carpet thick underfoot, wood-paneled corridors glowing warmly, the faint scent of polished brass and something floral she couldn't name. Ernesto set her bag down outside her compartment and tipped an imaginary hat.
"I wish you safe travels."
She nodded, stepping inside. The door slid shut with a decisive click. Only then did she exhale fully. She was placing her bag on the seat when footsteps paused outside. Through the narrow glass panel, she saw Ernesto's reflection lingering. Her heart gave a traitorous flutter. Moments later, the train lurched gently into motion. The world outside began to glide past, Levamart dissolving into fields and sky. Selena sat by the window, watching the distance grow between her and everything she had known. A knock sounded at the door. She stiffened, then rose and opened it. Ernesto stood there, looking almost sheepish.
I hope I'm not intruding, but I realized I never asked where you're headed.
She studied him. There was curiosity in his eyes, yes, but also restraint, a quiet respect that felt unfamiliar and precious.
Anywhere but where I've been.
He nodded as if that answer made perfect sense.
I'm going to the coast, a fresh start of my own, to be honest.
Something unspoken passed between them then, a shared understanding that beginnings often disguise themselves as escapes.
Well, if you'd care for company in the dining car later, I'd be honored.
Selena surprised herself by smiling. Not the careful, practiced smile she'd learned in Belle II, but a real one, slow and unguarded.
Yes, I think I would like that very much.
As Ernesto stepped back into the corridor, Selena closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing, not with fear this time, but with possibility. Outside, the train cut a shining path toward the horizon, carrying her forward at last into a life where being seen might mean being valued, and where grace, her own included, could finally stretch its wings. The dining car glowed with a soft, amber light, its white linen tables swaying gently with the rhythm of the rails. Silverware chimed quietly, and somewhere near the far end a violin played a tune so mellow it seemed stitched into the air itself. Selena hesitated at the doorway, suddenly aware of her plain dress and careful posture, but Ernesto was already rising from his seat, his face lighting up as though she were expected, no, welcomed.
Selena, over here.
He pulled out a chair for her, pushing it back in when she sat down. They spoke at first of harmless things, the elegance of the train, the richness of the food, the novelty of traveling without urgency. Ernesto told her he worked occasionally as a translator, drifting from city to city, belonging nowhere for long. Selena listened, fascinated by a life that seemed to stretch in all directions. When he asked about her, she chose her words carefully, not lies, but not the whole truth either. She spoke of Belle II, of fields and quiet evenings, of how small places could feel even smaller when dreams grew large. Ernesto did not press. He had a way of listening that made space rather than filling it, nodding, smiling, letting silences rest without rushing to smooth them over. Selena found herself laughing, softly at first, then more freely. The sound startled her. She couldn't remember the last time laughter had come without permission. When dessert arrived, he raised his glass.
A toast to new beginnings.
She met his gaze and lifted hers in return.
Yes, to new beginnings.
By the time they parted, the train was already deep into the countryside, moonlight painting the windows silver. Ernesto walked her back to her compartment, stopping a respectful distance away.
I'm glad I followed you.
I am also glad.
She thought, but only smiled and wished him good night. Inside her compartment, Selena sat on the edge of the seat, hands folded in her lap. The train hummed around her, steady and sure, like a promise being kept. For the first time since leaving Belle II, her thoughts did not circle back to fear. Instead, they drifted forward, to the coast Ernesto had mentioned, to cities she had never seen, to mornings that did not begin with dread. Hope, she realized, was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet. It settled gently in the chest, like a candle lit against the dark, not banishing it entirely, but enough to see by. Selena lay back and closed her eyes, the motion of the train rocking her toward sleep. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not, But for once that thought did not frighten her. It thrilled her. She was no longer running. She was going somewhere. As the days unfolded, the Aitharan Express became its own small world, measured not by miles but by meetings. Selena began to notice how she anticipated them. The soft knock at her compartment door just before dinner. The way Ernesto always seemed to spot her first in the observation car, lifting his glass in a quiet greeting before she even reached his table. These moments threaded themselves through her days, giving shape to time that might otherwise have blurred into motion and scenery. Conversation came easily now. The careful edges had worn smooth. It was during a late afternoon in the observation car, sunlight pouring in broad sheets across the curved windows, that Ernesto told her about his studies. He spoke with his hands, sketching shapes in the air as the train rolled through a valley of pale stone and dark pines.
I studied art history at first, but I couldn't stay there, too much looking backward. I wanted to make something of my own.
What medium do you mainly use? Do you paint?
Mostly. But some charcoal, some ink. I like things that feel unfinished, like they might still change their minds.
She liked that answer more than she could explain. He told her about Levimart, about friends who stayed up too late arguing about color and meaning, about borrowed rooms and borrowed time. Valentin, he said, was different, brighter, salt in the air, light that sharpened everything it touched.
And besides, there is a wider variety of galleries and dealerships there. I've also found a small space near the old harbour. It's nothing grand, but it has a north-facing window. Perfect lighting.
Selena pictured it easily, him standing there with rolled-up sleeves, the walls slowly filling with pieces inspired by everything he had seen. She realized she wanted this future for him, not as a distant idea, but as something real and close.
And the train? Why this one?
Ernesto laughed softly.
Because it stops where nothing else does.
He gestured toward the window as the train slowed near a lonely platform. No town in sight, just a weathered sign and a stretch of wildflowers bending in the wind.
Places like that don't get painted enough. Only this train pauses long enough to really look.
Selena watched as he pulled a small notebook from his coat and quickly sketched the slope of the hills, the way light caught on stone. There was reverence in the way he worked, as if the world were granting him a favor by existing. It was some time later, over coffee, the cups gently rattling with the tracks, that he mentioned his age, almost as an afterthought.
I'm 24, which feels very young when I think about what I don't know yet.
Selena smiled, a little wryly.
I'm 26, and I think I know what you're saying.
He looked up, surprised, then laughed, not mockingly but gently.
Really? I would have guessed older.
She raised an eyebrow, and he added quickly.
Not in years. In presence. You seem like someone who's really lived.
The words lingered between them. Selena felt their weight, but also their truth. She had really lived, compressed into a smaller space than she deserved, perhaps, but lived nonetheless. That evening, as she returned once more to her compartment, she realized something else, quieter but no less significant. The train was still carrying her away from her past, but now it was also carrying her towards something unexpected. Not a plan, not a promise, just a connection, warm, unfolding and real, moving at the steady, irresistible speed of the rails. Martineau rose from the plains like a memory she hadn't asked to revisit, stone buildings pressed close together, their colors muted by soot and age. The stop was longer than the others. Porters unloaded crates. Vendors called out softly. Passengers stretched their legs beneath a sky gone thin and gray. Selena hesitated before stepping down from the train. She told herself it was foolish to feel afraid here, so far from Belle II, wrapped in the anonymity of travel. Still, the air felt heavier the moment her shoes touched the platform. She walked a short distance, drawn by nothing in particular, just the need to move. That was when she sensed someone behind her. A figure stood near the edge of the station canopy, half hidden in shadow despite the daylight. His hood up, face obscured, not looking around, not fidgeting, waiting. Her pulse quickened. As Selena slowed, the figure stepped forward. Up close, the person was slighter than she'd expected, his movements careful, almost apologetic. Without a word, he held out an envelope.
I was told to give this to you.
The voice was unfamiliar, young, perhaps, but strained. Selena took the letter with trembling fingers. She did not need to open it. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. The heavy strokes, the angled letters. Her name written not with affection, but with possession. The sight of it pulled the ground out from under her as surely as if he were standing there himself. Her husband had found her. The hooded figure stepped back at once, as though relieved to be done.
I don't know what's in it. I wasn't told, only that it was important.
Then he turned and disappeared into the flow of people without waiting for a reply. Selena stood frozen, the letter burning against her palm. For a moment she considered tearing it open, needing to know, needing to brace herself for whatever threats or pleas lay inside. But another, quieter instinct stopped her. She already knew his voice, knew the shape his words would take. Reading them would only give him space in her head again. A whistle sounded, sharp, urgent.
Selena, come on, it's time to board.
Ernesto's voice cut through the fog. She turned and saw him hurrying toward her, concern written plainly across his face. He slowed when he reached her, his eyes dropping to the envelope clenched in her hand.
You look terrified. What happened?
She swallowed. Her throat felt tight, like she was choking on dust. Saying the words aloud hurt more than she expected.
It's from my husband. He knows I left.
Ernesto did not reach for her, did not crowd her. He simply stood with her, solid and present, as the train called them back.
You don't have to face this alone. You know that.
Those words did not come out dramatically, not as a vow, just as a fact. The platform seemed to tilt, the old fear rushing back, of being pulled backward, of being claimed again by a life she had fought so hard to escape. Selena looked down at the letter once more, then up at the waiting train, its doors still open, its promise still intact. Slowly, deliberately, she folded the envelope once, then again, and slipped it into her bag, unread.
No, not anymore.
She said this more to herself than to Ernesto. Together, they boarded the Aitharan Express. As the train began to move, Martineau slid away behind them, taking its shadows with it. Selena watched until the station vanished from view, her hand resting on her bag, her heart still racing, but steady enough now to keep going. The past had reached for her. This time, she did not turn back. Beyond Martineau, the world began to rise. The gentle plains folded upward into the Toldair highlands, where the land seemed to gather itself in preparation for something grander. The train labored into the ascent, its steady rhythm deepening as though it, too, felt the weight of what lay ahead. Pines thickened along the slopes, their dark green broken by pale seams of stone, and streams flashed silver far below before vanishing again into shadow. Selena and Ernesto claimed their usual places in the observation car, drawn there by a sense of ceremony. This stretch of the journey felt important, unrepeatable. As the train curved along the mountainside, the Argencier Range revealed itself in full, austere majesty. Jagged peaks shouldered against the sky, their upper reaches brushed with lingering snow even in the warmth of the season. Then, as the train emerged from a tunnel and sunlight poured in all at once, Ernesto caught his breath.
There, that's a perfect view.
Mount Oberalt rose above the others, unmistakable and commanding. Its summit cut cleanly into the blue, a crown of pale rock and ice that seemed almost luminous. From the railway line, it appeared impossibly close, as if one could reach out and trace its outline with a finger. Selena felt something loosen inside her as she looked at it. The mountain did not intimidate her. Instead, it steadied her. It had endured storms she could not imagine and remained standing. Somehow, that mattered. Ernesto had already pulled out his sketchbook. He worked with a kind of controlled urgency, pencil flying across the page as the train swept forward. His usual care gave way to instinct, short, sharp lines to suggest ridges, broad strokes to capture the way shadow pooled in the valleys. Every few moments, the view vanished as the train plunged into another tunnel, the windows turning briefly into mirrors. Each time they burst back into daylight, Ernesto groaned softly and began again. He laughed under his breath.
This is impossible. It keeps changing its mind.
Selena watched him more than the scenery now. The way his brow furrowed, the way his hands smudged graphite across the page without concern, the way awe kept breaking through his concentration. There was something deeply reassuring in his absorption, in the idea that beauty could demand so much attention and offer so much in return. They crossed bridges that seemed to hang in the air itself, iron lattices spanning dizzying drops. Far below, rivers cut bright paths through stone, and the wind rose up to meet the train, rattling the windows with a low, hollow sound. Selena felt suspended between worlds, no longer belonging to what lay behind her, not yet claimed by what awaited ahead. As Mount Oberalt slowly slipped behind them, Ernesto finally leaned back, exhaling. He closed the sketchbook at last.
I'll never do it justice.
Selena smiled.
Maybe that's not the point.
He looked at her, considering her words, then nodded.
You're right. Maybe it isn't.
The train rolled on, carrying them through shadow and light, over impossible heights and into long, echoing tunnels. And for the first time since Martineau, Selena felt the tight knot of fear loosen again, replaced by something stronger and quieter, a sense that the world was vast enough to hold her, and that beauty, once glimpsed, could still move forward with her, drawn in charcoal lines and shared silence as the rails sang beneath their feet. The Aitharan Express slowed with a measured sigh and came to rest beside a platform that seemed carved directly from the mountainside. This was one of the scheduled outings Ernesto had spoken of with such anticipation, one of the reasons he had chosen this train above all others. Waiting nearby, a line of shuttles stood ready, their engines idling softly against the vast hush of stone and sky. A short ride later, the air changed. It grew cooler, charged, threaded with moisture that clung to Selena's skin and darkened the fabric of her sleeves. Even before she saw them, she heard the Sharda's falls, a deep, thunderous presence, as if the mountain itself were breathing. Then the shuttles rounded a bend, and the world seemed to fall away. The Sharda's falls plunged over an immense precipice, a white ribbon unraveling into mist as it dropped more than 800 meters into a churning basin far below. The sheer scale of it was dizzying. Water shattered against rock with such force that the sound pressed into Selena's chest, making it difficult to tell where her own heartbeat ended and the falls began. They followed the other passengers to a restaurant built along the cliff's edge, its broad windows deliberately surrendered to the view. Even inside, conversation was reduced to gestures and smiles, words swallowed whole by the roar outside. Lunch arrived, beautifully arranged, barely noticed. Ernesto sat forward in his chair, eyes alight, already sketchbook in hand. He did not even pretend to eat at first. He leaned toward the glass, bracing his elbow, pencil racing to keep pace with the water's endless motion. He shaded in sweeping arcs, then broke them apart, trying again and again to suggest the impossible descent, the way the falls seemed to erase the distance between sky and earth. From time to time he paused, frustrated, then smiled and went on. Selena watched him in silence. There was something profoundly moving in his effort, not just the act of drawing, but the reverence behind it. He was not trying to conquer the scene or tame it. He was listening to it, answering its power in the only language he had. Mist drifted in through an open door, beating in his hair, dampening the pages of his book. He didn't seem to notice. Selena did. She noticed everything: the way his shoulders rose and fell, the intensity in his gaze, the quiet joy that softened his expression even as the falls roared on, indifferent and eternal. At last, he set the pencil down and laughed, shaking his head.
This place doesn't care whether it's drawn.
She smiled.
That might be why it's so beautiful.
Outside, the Chartreuse Falls continued their endless plunge, water turning to mist, mist to light. And as Selena sat there, watching Ernesto try and fail and try again to capture something larger than either of them, she felt a deep, steady certainty settle within her. Some things could not be owned. Some things could only be witnessed and allowed to change you. The mountains loosened their grip at last. The descent from the Argencier range was gradual, almost tender, the harsh angles of stone giving way to rolling grasslands and wide, open sky. The Sauneau plains stretched out in muted golds and greens, stitched together by hedgerows and distant farmsteads. After the vertigo of bridges and tunnels, the land felt calm, expansive, like a long exhale. For a time, the train ran beside the Valenly River. It moved with a deep, unhurried confidence, broad and reflective, catching the evening light in slow ripples. Selena watched it from the window, imagining how it would eventually bend westward, widening as it met the Hegessus Ocean. There was something comforting in that certainty, water always finding its way forward. Frébugie announced itself with light. The station glowed as dusk settled, its platforms alive with the soft bustle of arrivals and departures. A sense of occasion hung in the air. This was no forgotten stop in the wilderness, but a city that knew its own charm. From there, passengers were conveyed to the Clannet Hotel and Casino, a grand structure of glass, stone, and velvet-lit corridors where chandeliers caught and multiplied every flicker of light. Selena felt almost unreal walking through its doors. After freshening up, she and Ernesto laughed their way past the casino floor, all clinking glasses and spinning wheels, and chose instead the quieter allure of the Pavilion Theater. The play was intimate and clever, full of sharp dialogue and wistful pauses. Selena found herself absorbed, grateful for a story that unfolded by choice rather than force. When they returned to the hotel later that night, the lobby had grown hushed, the grandeur softened by lamplight and shadows. The receptionist looked up as Selena approached.
"Excuse me, ma'am. There was a letter delivered for you earlier."
The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Selena's fingers closed around the envelope before she could stop herself. Once again, she knew the handwriting without needing to see the name. Jameer. The letters were tight, controlled, stripped of any pretense. She did not wait to reach her room. The message inside was brief, mercilessly so.
I am following your every move. You cannot run forever.
The hotel seemed to tilt. All the warmth of the evening, the laughter, the play, the illusion of safety drained away in an instant. Her husband's presence pressed in on her, unseen but unmistakable, like a shadow stretching farther than it should. Ernesto noticed immediately.
Selena, what's wrong?
His voice was low and careful. She handed him the letter. He read it once, then again, his jaw tightening. His look was not one of anger, but resolute.
This isn't right. He shouldn't be able to do this to you.
Fear fluttered in her chest, sharp and familiar, but it did not take over. Something else stood beside it now, something steadier. She folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket, her hands no longer shaking.
I can't go back. I won't go back.
This wasn't defiance. It was fact. Ernesto met her gaze.
Then we damn well make sure you don't.
Outside the tall windows, Freibugi shimmered under the night sky, unaware of the quiet battle being fought within one of its grandest hotels. Selena stood there, caught between pursuit and possibility, knowing now that her escape was no longer just a journey of distance, but of resolve. And for the first time, she understood something clearly. Being followed did not mean being caught. Not if she kept moving forward. Beyond Freibugi, the rhythm of the rails changed again, steady but insistent, as if the train itself knew it was closing in on something inevitable. Selena found she could no longer lose herself in the passing scenery. Each curve of track, each distant signal, tightened the coil of dread in her chest. Martitian loomed in her thoughts like a closed door she was being forced to open, the penultimate stop before Valencon, close enough to hope to feel real, close enough for fear to sharpen its teeth. She slept poorly that night, waking to imagined footsteps in the corridor, to the echo of Jameer's voice where there was only the hum of steel on steel. By morning, the anxiety sat heavy and unrelenting. She admitted at last, her voice barely above a whisper as she and Ernesto stood together in the observation car. The plains outside were giving way once more to low hills, the land narrowing as towns began to appear more frequently.
I'm afraid of Martisian. I keep thinking that's where this ends, that he'll be there, that I'll be dragged back to Beltu, or worse.
Ernesto did not try to dismiss her fear. He rested his hands on the rail beside her, anchoring himself before speaking.
Then we don't face it alone, and we don't pretend it isn't real.
He reached into his coat and produced the 2 letters, the one from Martina, still unopened, and the second from Freibugi, its words already burned into memory.
This isn't just cruel, it's a threat. And this train has rules. People whose job it is to keep passengers safe.
The idea took hold slowly, like light seeping under a door. Together, they sought out the train's guard, a tall, broad-shouldered man with silver at his temples and an expression shaped by long years of responsibility. He listened without interruption as Selena explained, her voice trembling at first, then growing steadier as the words found their path. She handed over the letters. The guard read them carefully, his mouth tightening. When he looked up, his gaze was firm and reassuring.
You did the right thing. This kind of behavior is taken very seriously, especially on a line like the Aitharan Express.
He folded the letters and placed them inside a leather folio.
I will alert the station master at Martitian. Local security will be present on the platform. If anyone approaches you without cause, we'll know.
Selena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding.
You will not be alone, and if you feel unsafe at any point, you come directly to me. Understood?
Yes, sir, and thank you.
As they walked back toward their compartments, the train surged forward, sunlight breaking across the windows. The fear had not vanished, but it had changed. It no longer filled the whole space. There was room now for resolve, for planning, for the quiet strength that came from being believed. Ernesto glanced at her, offering a small, crooked smile.
You see, you're not running anymore. You're choosing.
Selena looked ahead, toward where the tracks vanished into the distance, carrying them closer to Martitian, and beyond it, to Valencon. For the first time since receiving the letters, she felt something close to readiness. Whatever awaited her at the next stop, she would meet it with eyes open, and not alone. The train slowed as it approached Martitian, its wheels crying softly against the rails. Selena stood by her compartment window despite herself, heart hammering, hoping, foolishly, that her fear had exaggerated everything. It had not. There he was. Jameer stood near the edge of the platform as if he owned it, broad-shouldered and unmistakable, his posture radiating the same cold certainty that had ruled her life in Bel-2. On either side of him were two men she knew all too well. Gordon, the bull, Shipler loomed like a living wall, thick neck straining against his collar, fists hanging heavy and ready. John, the enforcer, Coven stood in contrast, lean, sharp-eyed, his stillness far more unsettling than movement ever could be. Selena felt the blood drain from her face. One of them shifted his weight. Jameer turned his head slightly, scanning the train. That was enough. She staggered back from the window, pulse roaring in her ears, seized by the certainty that she had been seen, even if she hadn't. Fear lent her speed. She slipped into the corridor and hurried to Ernesto's cabin, knocking once before pushing inside.
They're here, all of them. Jameer, Shipler, Kovan.
Ernesto's expression hardened instantly. No hesitation, no disbelief. He reached for her hand.
Officer Lyson, now.
They moved quickly through the carriage, the train hissing as its doors opened below. Lyson was already rising from his desk when they entered. Selena forced herself to speak clearly, naming them, describing their positions. Lyson's jaw tightened. He reached for his radio at once.
Railway Police. This is Guard Lyson on the Aitharan Express. We have confirmed hostile individuals boarding at Martesian, known violent associates. Immediate response required.
The reply crackled back, urgent and sharp. Outside, boots hit metal. Jameer and his men boarded the train with grim purpose, spreading out, Shipler cracking his knuckles, Coven's eyes darting ahead like a predator scenting blood. They moved fast, but not fast enough. Lyson ushered Selena and Ernesto back toward the secure end of the carriage. Doors were locked. Passengers were ordered to the floor. Tension coiled tight as wire. Then the first gunshot rang out. The sound ripped through the carriage, deafening in the confined space. Railway police stormed in from both ends, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands that were swallowed by chaos. Shipler went down with a roar as a bullet tore through his shoulder, sending him crashing into the corridor wall. Coven raised his weapon, too late. The exchange was brutal and mercifully brief. When the smoke cleared, John Coven lay motionless on the floor. Gordon Shipler groaned, bleeding but alive, pinned under an officer's knee. Jameer stood frozen between them, his bravado finally stripped away, hands trembling as he dropped his weapon. An officer barked.
Get down and stay down.
Jameer sank to his knees. Selena watched from behind Lyson, her body shaking, not with fear now, but with release. The sound of cuffs clicking shut echoed louder in her ears than the gunshots had. Jameer looked up once, searching wildly. Selena did not hide. She met his gaze, steady and unafraid. This time, he was the one trapped. As the police led him away, Ernesto felt Selena's grip tighten on his sleeve. He placed a hand over hers, grounding her.
It's over. You're safe now.
Selena closed her eyes, letting the truth of it settle at last. The train stood still for several long minutes. Then, with a deep, reassuring hum, the Aitharan Express began to move again, leaving Martesian behind, carrying Selena, not as a fugitive, but as a free woman, toward Valencon and the life she had claimed for herself. Beyond Martesian, the world softened. The tension that had gripped the train for so long seemed to dissolve the moment it gathered speed again, as though the rails themselves were shedding a burden. Selena noticed it first in her body, the way her shoulders slowly lowered, the way her breath no longer caught at every unfamiliar sound. For the first time since leaving Bel-2, she was not measuring exits or scanning faces. She was simply there. The countryside rolled past in gentle rhythms, vineyards stitched neatly across low hills, villages glowing warm in the late afternoon sun, the distant shimmer of the Hegessus Ocean beginning to hint at itself in the air. The journey felt lighter, almost celebratory, as if the Aitharan Express were carrying them, not away from danger, but towards something they had earned. Selena laughed more easily now. She slept deeply. She lingered over meals instead of rushing through them. And always, Ernesto was there, quietly attentive, no longer just a companion of circumstance, but something far more essential. Their conversations changed too. They spoke less about where they had been and more about what might come next. Ernesto showed her sketches inspired by the journey, Mount Oberalt's stark crown, the wild plunge of the Chartreuse Falls, a half-finished drawing of Selena herself, gazing out a train window, as if her gown had slipped off her shoulder and halfway down her back. When he realized what he had done, his face flushed slightly.
You don't mind, do you?
She shook her head.
It's just that I've never seen myself like that before. It's beautiful.
On the final evening before Valencon, they sat together in the observation car long after most passengers had gone to bed. Outside, the night sea breathed against the land, its presence felt even when it could not yet be seen. Reflections of starlight trembled in the glass, mingling with their own. Silence stretched between them, not awkward but full. Ernesto said at last,
I don't want this to end when the train stops.
Selena turned to him. The fear that once governed her choices was gone now, replaced by something braver. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his.
Neither do I. Ernesto, I'm in love with you.
He exhaled as though he had been holding that breath for days.
And I love you too.
The words did not feel rushed or fragile. They settled, solid and warm, like something that had been waiting patiently to be named. A little later, he asked almost casually,
Do you have somewhere to stay in Valençon?
She shook her head.
No, I was going to figure it out when I arrived.
Selena searched his face, not for doubt, but for truth. She found only openness.
I have a small apartment. It's nothing special. One room, really. I'll be turning it into my studio, but there's space, if you'd like.
I would like that, very much.
The train carried them through the dark toward dawn, toward the city waiting at the edge of the sea. And for the first time in her life, Selena did not feel as though she were stepping into the unknown alone. She was arriving, free, loved, and ready to begin some new and exciting adventure. If you enjoyed this tale, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. It would mean the world to us.